How's it, guys? Been wanting to make this video for quite a while now. It's about braid and the so-called wind knot. Everybody calls it a wind knot, and today I want to chat to you about the myth about the wind knot. Wind actually has got not a lot to do with getting knots in your line. Not saying that when I say the myth about wind knots that you're not going to get a knot in your braid. You are going to get a knot in your braid at some stage. Okay, but there are so many causes of knots forming in your braid, and purely by the fact that people call it a wind knot, everybody thinks the wind causes it. Wind can cause it, but your biggest problem is this spool here, and how you spool your braid. That's the key to you can't say prevent, because prevent means that it's not going to happen. To mitigate knots in your braid, let's start at the beginning. When you spool braid, you spool it. You have to spool it a little bit different to monofilament, for instance. Monofilament has got stretch in it, and as you spool your line, it stretches a slight bit as it goes onto the spool, and then it contracts on itself, and it stays nicely compacted on your spool. The difference with braid is there's absolutely no stretch in braid, nothing at all. So the first mistake a lot of beginner braid fishermen does is they don't spool the braid tight. When you spool your reel with braid, you have to really spool it tight, and a couple of reasons for that. First of all, if you don't spool it tight, if it's just loosely spooled on your reel, the moment you get snagged up or you hook into a big fish or things like that, the line cuts into the rest of the line that's on the spool. It cuts straight into it, and it gets stuck in there. You can get it out, that's not the problem. The biggest problem that you're going to get with line that's too loosely spooled is that when you cast, more than one wrap of braid around the spool comes off at one time, and then that wraps around each other, and there's your knot. Then the second one is when you spool your reel, you need to really look. Once you spool it, your high-end reels don't have this problem. It's uneven spooling of your line on your reel, on your spool. High-end reels, that's 99.9% of the time you spool it, you can see it's level. It's not spooled more to the top than at the bottom, or more to the bottom than to the top. Now, if that happens, if you take your spool off, on the shaft where your spool fits on, there's a couple of washers there. If it spools too much at the top, you need to add a washer. If it spools too much to the bottom of your spool, you need to take away one of the washers and ensure that you get this line to spool evenly on your spool. Now there's different ways you can spool your reel. You can take it to your tackle shop. They have line spoolers. They actually take your spool off, they put it on a machine, and they spool the braid onto your spool with a machine, and it gets done evenly. But if your spool is too high or too low, again, once you start casting, it's going to be uneven wrap of the line on your spool. So if it spools too much to the top or the bottom, what happens when you cast? More than one wrap of braid comes off at one time again, and the knot forms. It entangles with each other and the knot forms, and there you get your knot, and everybody refers to it as a wind knot. So as you can see, at this stage, wind has got nothing to do with any of these knots that happens on your spool or on your braid. So the other, let's take it forward now and say you've spooled it tightly, it's level, everything is 100%. The next problem you're going to get is overspooling. Now, you overspool your reel, more than one wrap is going to come off your spool at some stage, and it's going to make a knot. Maybe your first couple of casts you won't have an issue with knots if you overspool your reel, but you must remember, especially if you cast light little lures like this, you cast it out, you reel it in, obviously that distance that you've cast and the line that you brought back onto your spool is not as tight as it was when you actually spooled your line. So again, if it's overspooled, you're going to have more than one wrap that's going to come off at one time, and you're going to get a knot in your line. Then the other thing that we must remember is this bail. A lot of people, I've seen a lot of videos where they say don't engage, don't flip this bail back by using the handle, but nobody tells you why. And the reason for that is when you use your handle to engage your bail, again, this bail arm, the moment you turn the handle, this rotor part of the reel starts turning, and that causes line to wrap over the top of your spool, and now you reel in, but you've got a loop of line lying over your spool, and believe me, your next cast is going to be a knot. That loop of line that's over your spool is going to pick up, and it's going to start wrapping around the line that's coming off the spool, and you're going to have a major knot. So again, no wind involved yet. Okay, so wind does play a role when you're casting into the wind, especially with the bail. So not the way you should close your bail is actually with your hand, because then the rotor is in a stationary position, and the chances of you getting a loop of line over your spool is less. Believe me, it's less. It's not going to eliminate it. You'll have to watch your spool. Fishing with braid takes a bit more effort to make sure. I'm going to see if I can get a loop over the spool and show you what happens when you give. We're going to engage. I can't even engage. Okay. So it's not going to happen every time you cast. Like for instance, in this case, it did not happen. Maybe I mustn't cast that far, otherwise this video is going to take a hell of a long time. Again, not. So basically, I'm going to try again, but I'm not going to let you watch this. So as soon as I get a loop in the spool, I will be back, and I'll show you what happens when you loop cast after you have a loop of line over your spool. So let me. This wasn't over the spool. It was most probably over the spool, and as I started reeling, it came off. So what you have there now is this little loop sticking out there. Okay, so most probably with my next cast, I'm gonna get a knot in my line, see if I can get it out. I'm lucky. So this time I'm lucky that that loop didn't interfere and didn't make a knot. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does. But your biggest problems that you're going to have with wind knots and knots in your braid is right from the beginning. If you don't spool tightly, if the line doesn't spool level on your spool, and if you overspool, you're going to have endless problems with knot. It's not going to stop. It's frustrating. I remember when I started fishing with braid, I eventually took it off and chucked it in the bin. I thought it was the biggest crap in the world because of all those mistakes that I made. I didn't spool it tightly. It was most probably unevenly spooled. I definitely overspooled, and that causes it just messes up your fishing day, believe me. So wind does play a role when you're casting into the wind. It causes a lot of slack on this part of the line once you cast. And the moment you start reeling, especially when you flip the bail with a reel handle, you're going to get that loop on your spool. Loose line on your spool, the loop over the spool, and you're going to just reel over that, and the next cast you're going to cast, it's going to pull that loop off and it's going to start wrapping itself around that loop, and you're going to sit with a very nasty knot in your braid. So hopefully these tips will help you in you getting less knots in your braid. So yeah, thanks for watching, and if you want to, you can subscribe as well, or you can hit that like button as well. That's only if you want to. Thank you so much, guys. Enjoy. Cheers.